Hello, everyone. This is the 31st episode of the Soccernostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles, and I'm joined by Paul from Shipley in England. For this episode, we start a new interview series with Mr. Joško Čučuk as we discuss the Croatian national team matches from 1990 to 1994. We aim to have a series of interviews with Mr. Čučuk as we examine the Croatian national team through its glory years of the 1990s. This first episode will cover events, football and social from the end of the 80s and end in June 1994. We will discuss the Croatian national team matches as well as significant events at club level that impacted the Croatian national team during the decade.
Hello, Joško. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. I should mention that Joško contacted us after hearing one of the episodes on the Dutch national team. So it's nice to know that people are listening and enjoying in different parts of the world. So it's good to have you on, Joško. Can you just introduce yourself and share some of your early football memories with us and tell us how your interest in the game has developed since then?
Of course. Hello, Sean. Hello, Paul. So I'm a football enthusiast from Croatia, from Dubrovnik, one small town on Croatian coast. I work like a tour guide, so since situation today with tourism is, like we know, with this COVID situation is horrible, so there is no tourism like it was before. So I have plenty of time for my hobby, which is watching documentaries and old football matches from 80s and early 90s when I started to watch football. So my first recalls or first memories of football matches would be Hajduk Split in Yugoslav League, which was pretty strong at that time, and of course in European Cups. At that point, Hajduk was a relatively good team with a few quarterfinals and semifinals of some European Cups in 80s. Also, my first memories of some big football events or football championships would be that Euro 88, when my obsession with Dutch football started. And Johan Cruyff, Rinus Michels, and players like Marco van Basten, Frank Rijkaard, Ruud Gullit, and Dutch football in general. So, and also AC Milan with those trio of Dutch players. Also, those were the years when Yugoslavia started to fall apart and new, let's say, strong team or new force, I would say, was born. And beginning of that national team, which won bronze medal in 98 in France, was in early 90s. Well, we will talk about that match in 1990 when everything started. So if you're ready, I'm ready.
Thank you, Joško.
Thank you, Joško.
The Croatian adventure of the 90s has its root at a time when Yugoslavia was still a unified country. In fact, some of the players who would form the backbone of the memorable 90s Croatian national team were in the early stages or already integral parts of the Yugoslavian football scene at national level. Perhaps the origin of this generation can be traced to the fall of 1987, with Yugoslavia's participation in the 1987 Under-20 World Cup in Chile. As you remember, that Yugoslavian team triumphed in the Under-20 World Cup on October 25th, 1987, by defeating West Germany on a penalty kick shootout. Now, some of the players are already household names as far as history of the Croatian national team. Those included Robert Jarni, Igor Štimak, Zvonimir Boban, Robert Prosinjacki, Davor Šuker, and other lesser-known figures like Dubravko Pavlicic, if I'm spelling correctly, or Tomislav Piplica. Piplica, sorry. So do you feel this group is, or this Yugoslavian team is kind of the beginning of the great Croatian team of a decade later?
Yes, I can agree with that. And let's say the main players who played in 90s, like Jarnic, Timac, Boban, Prosinečki, and Šuker, they were very important part of that team. Also, Boban and Prosinečki won the award for the best player of that competition in Chile. So that group of the players, we call them Chileanci or Chilens till they finish their careers. So that would be a beginning of that Croatian national team. Some Serbian players who played very important role, or Montenegrin players in that team also.
A lot of these players would advance to the full Yugoslavian national team under Ivica Ozim in the following years. Some of them would, in fact, participate in the 1990 World Cup. But before that, there were a number of significant events that would shape some of those players and also the history of Croatian football. There's a famous match at Zagreb between Dinamo Zagreb and Red Star Belgrade on May 13th, 1990. Historically, we refer to this match as the match where Boban kicked a policeman. Can you expand on that and the historical significance of this match?
Well, we are taking that point like beginning of the end of Yugoslavia. So already in late 80s, there was lots of problems with. Yugoslavia was a really poor country in that time. We had big economical crisis and also strong nationalism in some countries, and ideas of dividing Yugoslavia differently than it was in that moment. So let's say that match, there was a big tensions even before that match and on that day. So when supporters of Red Star, or Crvena Zvezda as we pronounce it here, came to Zagreb, they started with problems, let's say, in the town. So during the match, Dinamo Zagreb supporters started to return and that match was never played. So when there was invasion of Dinamo Zagreb supporters on the pitch, Zvonimir Boban kicked one police officer who was punching some of those supporters of Dinamo Zagreb, let's say in defense. So some football historicals would say that was beginning of end of Yugoslavia. After that, Boban had a fine of, I think, 8 months. Couldn't play, and that was one of the reasons why, well, probably the main reason why he was not part of that national team in World Cup of 1990 in Italy. He's supposed to be there.
Just a few weeks later, maybe perhaps as a result of what happened during this match, again at Zagreb on June 3rd, 1990, Yugoslavia played a preparatory friendly against Netherlands ahead of the 1990 World Cup. As far as the match itself, Netherlands won 2-0. But it was events surrounding this match that are also referenced somewhat the beginning of the end of this national team. I remember Dejan Savicevic in an interview with Ons Mondial in 91. He referenced this match as one of the signs where he could tell something was about to change. He mentioned how the national anthem was booed. And obviously during this match, throughout this match, I would say, the Yugoslavian players were booed by the fans. And I would say the Dutch were in fact supported, but probably by the local crowd, I would think. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember that match. Well, let's say through the fog. I was really young at that point, but I remember that match when national anthem was booed, and Dutch players and the selector of Dutch team, Ben Hacker, I think.
Yes, Leo Ben Hacker.
He said that he didn't knew that Dutch team had that much supporters in Yugoslavia. Of course, he didn't knew why why, but that was mostly political thing, and that was because of what was happening few months before that match between Dinamo and Crvena Zvezda.
Surprisingly, Yugoslavia actually did well during the World Cup and reached the quarterfinals. And you had many Croatian players taking part and excelling. You had Tomislav Ivkovic in goal, the veteran Zoran Vulic, Davor Jozic, who at the time was playing at Cesena in Italy, Zlatko Vujovic, the striker. At that time, he was playing at Paris Saint-Germain, I believe, in France.
I think he was.
Yeah. A young Alen Boksic, Robert Jarni, Davor Šuker, Andrej Panadic, but most importantly, Robert Prosinecki, who excelled during this World Cup and was touted as one of the best young players during the World Cups and a future great following this World Cup. So he was a primary beneficiary of this World Cup, and you can say this World Cup set him on the path to stardom. Now, do you think he would have played as much had Mehmet Bazdarovic not been suspended?
Well, probably he wouldn't. That was the thing about that team. The supporters of national team of Yugoslavia were, let's say, in that moment against Ivica Osim, who was selector, and because he was very much attached to those old players, yes, like Baždarević or, for example, Vujovic, who was, well, he wasn't that old in that time. If you're looking from today's point of view, yeah, he was 31, I think, or 32. Yeah.
But Susic, Safet Susic.
Well, he was 35, I think, in that point. But yes, there was lots of those old players, and there was that young generation who won that World Cup in Chile in '87. So everyone expected that they will have, let's say, bigger opportunity, or that they will play more. For example, Boksic or even Šuker. And instead of them, he chose Susic and Vujovic to play more. But yes, probably if Baždarević was there, then Prosinecki wouldn't get that much chance to play. Interesting thing about Prosinecki is that he was a scorer for Yugoslavia on World Cup and also for Croatia 8 years.
Oh, yes. 8 years later, yeah.
For two different countries.
Yeah, he's in the history books because of that. Yeah. The following season, on September 26, another significant event, this time at Split. During the Hajduk Split and Partizan Belgrade, the other major team from Belgrade, the Hajduk Split supporters entered the pitch and actually burned a Yugoslavian flag. So that was yet another example of what was coming down the road in a few months, basically. You were too young again as well, but is this also talked about often since then?
Yes, of course. I remember that also. Yes, I was young. That match, I think, we couldn't watch it directly on our national television. But yes, that was something which everyone talked about in that moment, So yes, that was another crucial or main point which showed us that there was the end of Yugoslavia close.
Just a few weeks later, we come to the very first match of this modern Croatian national side. At the time, Yugoslavia had not split up officially, so there was no official Croatia. When I was reading about this match at the time, the Croatian national team was actually referred to as Croatian All-Stars. In some ways, there was an unofficial feel to it, but obviously this has gone down as the first official match of the Croatian national team post-World War II. This was in Zagreb in October 17th, 1990. Croatia took on the United States. This was first match after free elections in then Croatia. For this match, at Maksimir Stadion, for the very first Croatian national team, you had Dražan Jerković as the selector. He selected the following squad: Dražan Ledić in goal from Dinamo Zagreb, he'd be replaced by Tonči Gabrić of Rijeka in the 80th minute. Zoran Vulic, at the time he was at Mallorca in Spain. Dragutin Čelić of Hajduk Split. Darko Drazic, Hajduk Split. Vlado Casalo, at the time he was at Nuremberg in Germany. Sasha Persson of Dinamo Zagreb. He was replaced by Gregor Zidane of Dinamo Zagreb in the 71st minute. Kuchtim Shala of Dinamo Zagreb. Zlatko Kranjčar captaining the side. At the time he was at St. Polten in Austria. Ivan Svetkovic, at the time he was at St. Trudens in Belgium. Alyosha Asanovic, at the time he was at French club Metz. He'd be replaced by Mladen Mladenovic of Dinamo Zagreb in the 58th minute. And finally, Marko Milnaric of Cannes. I'll just quickly run through the U.S. team before we get to the match. For USA, you had Tony Miola in goal, Steve Trichu, Marcelo Balboa, Desmond Armstrong, Robin Fraser, Jimmy Banks. He replaced by Mike Windishman, 81st minute. John Harkes, Eric Eichmann. He'd be replaced by Brian Bliss in the 57th minute. Paul Crump. He'd be replaced by Troy Dyack in the second half. Bruce Murray, and captaining the side, Peter Vermes, and the side managed by Bob Gansler. Now, as far as the match itself, Alyosha Asanovic gave Croatia the lead in the 29th minute, and a few minutes later, in the 33rd minute, Ivan Svetkovic doubled the lead. And 10 minutes before the end, Troy Dyack would reduce the deficit. Actually, I should mention this, thanks to you, I learned just last week that Troy Dyack, his grandparents were Croatian and he moved to the United States. But that's another story. But let's going through some of the Croatian lineup. These first matches, I read in an interview with Robert Posinekci, he said that he refused to participate in his matches because at the time it was unofficial, as Croatia had not declared independence yet. As far as these players, Ledic and Asanovic would be integral parts of the Croatian team until 2000. Others, like that's Zidane, Kuchtim Shala, and Milnaric, this would be their one and only cap. Mladenovic would be in the lineup until like 96. Tony Gabrić, the backup goalkeeper, would gain like 9 caps until 97. Other interesting aspect of this match that you brought to our attention is that Kuchtim Shala was actually Albanian, right? And Zidane was actually Slovenian. They tricked somehow FIFA into recognizing this match as an official match, even though some of these players were not officially Croatian. Can you expand on that?
Well, they didn't trick FIFA. They tricked the Yugoslav National Association, Football Association, because they needed permission to that match happen. Because there was U.S. team was on tour in Europe. They played against Poland, and they there was Ivan Opachak. He was ex-goalkeeper of Croatia Toronto Football Club from Canada. He was in Canada. He was Croatian immigrant. And his idea was, with his contacts in US, to arrange that match between Croatia, which was still part of Yugoslavia, and US. So at that point, Ante Pavlović, who was in Yugoslav Football Federation, gave permission. He signed the paper. He was Croatian, and he signed the paper that Yugoslav Football Association allowed that match, although he didn't ask anyone else from all other republics, because Yugoslavia was federation of 6 republics. And with his help and with help of Croatian journalists, Darko Tironi, Tomislav Židak, well, mostly those two, they managed to organize that match. The president of Croatian Football Federation, because in that Yugoslav Football Federation, there was 6 republics and there was president of each of it, was Mladen Vedriš. Mladen Vedriš was president of Croatian Football Association till 1994, between 1990 till 1994. So all of those guys helped to organize this match. Without them, probably we wouldn't have the match. There was a problem in that point, there was a problem to find the players who would play at all, because in the same time, there was a young team of Yugoslavia, so Yugoslavia under 20, they played some qualification match in Russia. So there was Zvonimir Boban, Alen Bokšić, Robert Jarni, and blah, blah, and the others. And also there was some players who played for Yugoslav national team, so they didn't want to play for Croatia. So Prosinečki, he couldn't play anyway. If he wanted, he had to play for that under 20 national team for that point. But later on, he also didn't want to play for Croatia until 1994, until we are member of FIFA and became member of FIFA in 92, but still he didn't play those friendly matches until that match against Spain in 94, but we'll come to that. So in that match, yes, we had Ladic and Asanovic. They were part of Croatian national team till qualifications for Euro 2000, which we didn't succeed. But also there was two players which were not Croatian. So there was Gregor Židan, Slovenian, who played for Dinamo Zagreb. So that was connection. And also Kutim Šalja. Well, he was Albanian by nationality, but he was from Kosovo. Kosovo was autonomic unit in Yugoslavia, in Serbia at the point. Now it's independent country. After that match, Kutim Šalja couldn't visit their family in Kosovo for next 9 years. So he was not allowed to enter Kosovo because he played that match. So Serbians were not very satisfied with the thing that we managed to play that match. Also, there was some relatively old players like Marko Mlinarić, Kranjčar. So those were pretty old players who was near the end of career, and that was the reason why they didn't have any more caps for Croatian national team. Also Zoran Vulic, although he played few more years, he played even in Hajduk Split in the time when we played quarterfinal of Champions League in 94-95, but still he was pretty old player. So we had other, let's say, younger new stars like Bilic, Nimac, and the others. Also Dragutin Čelić, he was also pretty old, and Ivan Cvjetković. So all of those players who managed to accept to play for Croatia, they were near the end of their career, because it was in that time, it was pretty hard to say, yes, I will play for Croatia, and maybe you're waiting a cap for Yugoslavia. Maybe if you're playing. So interesting thing is that Zoran Vulic was the only player who played for Yugoslavian national team at the moment, and he decided to play for Croatia. Another interesting thing about Vulic is that Croatia had only one match during the time of Yugoslavia. So only one match which they played like a national team. That was in 1956 against Indonesia. It was also a friendly match, unofficial. And the interesting fact is that his father was goalkeeper in that match.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah. So in that documentary which I sent you, you can see. Well, you can't understand that part, but he's talking about that, and his father never mentioned that to him, or he wasn't mentioning that at all, because that was not very popular thing.
Right.
And how significant was this match, Joško, in forming a national identity? Was it seen as a big thing at the time that this match against the USA was being played?
Yeah, that was a really big thing here in Croatia. I remember that match, although I was still pretty young. I was 8 and a half, let's say, at the point. And but I remember that match. I remember I watched that on TV, and we were very proud that we finally can play. Although that was still Yugoslavia. The World Cup was a few months ago. We were supporting Yugoslavia at the moment on that World Cup. Although that was, well, let's say, mixed. In all of those years, like mixed feelings. Yeah. When you're talking about Yugoslavian national team and Croatia, this was something special, like it was special in '94 when we started with qualifications against Estonia. I remember that. very freshly, and that was we were really, really proud.
2 months later, Croatia played another match, this time at Rijeka against Romania. Again, the selector was Dražan Jerković. For this match at Rijeka's Kantrida Stadion, you had Dražan Ledić of Dinamo Zagreb in goal. He replaced by Tonči Gabrić of Rijeka in the 46th minute. Saša Peršon of Dinamo Zagreb. Robert Jarni of Hajduk Split. This was his first cap for the new Croatia. Dragutin Čelić of Hertha Berlin in Germany. He'd replaced by Igor Stimac of Hajduk Split in the 66th minute. Again, this was Stimac's first match for Croatia. Vlado Kasalo of Nuremberg. Sreko Bogdan of Karlsruhe in Germany. Ivan Svetkovic of St. Trudens. He'd be replaced by Nikola Jurcevic of NK Zagreb in the 66th minute. Mladen Mladenovic of Dinamo Zagreb. Zlatko Kranjčar captaining the side from St. Polten in Austria. He replaced by Robert Rupčić of Rijeka in the 86th minute. Zvonimir Boban of Dinamo Zagreb, his first cap for Croatia. And Davor Šuker of Dinamo Zagreb, his first cap for Croatia. Croatia would win this match 2-0. Kranjčar scoring in the 24th minute and Bogdan scoring in the 49th minute. For Kasalo and Kranjčar, these were the second and final caps for Croatia. And as far as Kranjčar, he played for Rapid Vienna, I believe. And yes, he was also Croatian national team manager from 2004 to 2006. And he's father of Niko Kranjčar of Portsmouth and Tottenham, among others. For Čelić, Bogdan, and Jurcevic, this was their first cap. Igor Stimac would be with the national team until 2002. He was the manager of the national team around 2012, 2013. Jurcevic would be in the lineup until 96. We all know about Boban. He'd be in the national team until 99. And Šuker as well until 2002. For Rupčić, this would be the first and only cap. And I'll quickly go through the Romanian lineup. There are some familiar faces. You got Bogdan Steli of Dinamo Bucharest. He'd replaced by Florin Tene of Gloria Bistrița in the 46th minute. Dan Petrescu of Stoia Bucharest. Of course, future Chelsea player. Emil Sandoi of University Craiova. Ioan Moga of Gloria Bistrița. Constantin Stanici of Sportul Studentesc, replaced by Emil Ursu of Bacău, 46th minute. George Popescu of PSV Eindhoven. Marius Ceregi of Dinamo Bucharest, he replaced by Tudorel Criste of Dinamo Bucharest in the 75th minute. Ili Dumitrescu of Stoia Bucharest, future Tottenham player. Ovidiu Hanganu of Cornivul, he'd be replaced by Vasil Manele of University Craiova. Pavel Badia of University Craiova, he'd be replaced by Zoltan Kadar of University Cluj-Napoca. And Ion Timofte of Politehnica Timișoara, side managed by Mircea Radulescu. The significant aspect of this match is, I guess, the debuts of Boban, Šuker, Jarni, Stimac. Still no Prosinecci, but you can see the backbone of the future Yugoslavian side kind of starting around this match. And like we said, a lot of more younger players for this match. This was towards the tail end of the year, so I don't think there were any qualifiers or any important matches, so they were able to select some of these players. What's the takeaway in as far as Croatian press or Croatian football fans as far as this match?
Well, this was 2 months, I think, after the match against US, and it wasn't that, let's say, important like that match with United States. Yes, interesting thing is that now we had some new players who couldn't play before, like Jarni, Boban Šuker for first time, and Štimac. Also, there was Nikola Jurčević, who played for Zagreb at that point. Later on, he played for Austria Salzburg, or Casino Salzburg was the name at that point, and he was a striker. And later on in that team, who played in Euro 96, he played like a right wing back because we were missing that position. Now still he was playing like a striker. I think he changed Ivan Cvjetković, who was a striker on that match. And still we had the same selector, so that was Dražan Jerković. And in the next few years we will change few selectors until we come to Miroslav Blažević, who was selecting those, let's say, through all of 90s when we played qualification and, let's say, official matches, not friendlies anymore.
A few months later, important events politically, but as well as far as football for then Yugoslavia. On May 8th, 1991, we have the Yugoslav Cup final, the very last one, I believe.
Yeah, that was
and
the last.
With Red Star and Hajduk Split. And Alen Boksic scored the winner for Hajduk Split. A few weeks later, Red Star would triumph in the Champions League final against Olympique Marseille with Robert Prosinecki. Throughout the season, his star status had been growing. And by the end of the season, all the big teams in Europe were trying to sign Prosinecki. He was the player of the moment. A few years later, his status would dip due to injuries. But in the summer of 1991, we have to stress that he was the player of the moment as far as everyone wanted to sign him. And you had AC Milan, Real Madrid, all the big teams trying to sign him. In the end, he signed for Real Madrid. A few weeks after that, I think that's when Slovenia and Croatia declared independence. It was in June, I believe, right? In June of 91. Yes. So obviously, this triggered the whole Yugoslav civil war after the declaration of independence of both nations. It seems like because Croatia was geographically closer to Serbia, Montenegro, that's why most of the fighting was there. I think Slovenia must have probably was spared from the fighting as a result, right?
Yeah, they had like 10 days conflict, but not real war.
I'm assuming to commemorate this, on June 19th, Slovenia and Croatia played an international match. Incidentally, while Croatia considers this match official, Slovenia does not. For this match on June 19th, you have, again, Dražan Jerković as selector, and he selects Dražan Ledić of Dinamo Zagreb, Zoran Vulić of Mallorca. He's replaced by Zlatko Vuković of Osijek in the 30th minute, Darko Drazic of Hajduk Split, Željko Župetic of NK Zagreb, Slavko Istvanic of Dinamo Zagreb, Sreko Bogdan of Karlsruhe, Nikola Jurčević of NK Zagreb. He replaced by Fabian Komljenović of Rijeka in the 46th minute. Mladen Mladenović of Dinamo Zagreb. He replaced by Damir Kalapac of NK Zagreb, 80th minute. Ivan Cvetković of St. Trudens. He replaced by Ivo Separovic of Olimpia Ljubljana in the 46th minute. Zvonimir Boban of Dinamo Zagreb. Aljosha Asanovic of Metz. He replaced by Dražen Biskup of NK Zagreb in the 80th minute. Croatia would win this match at Morska, 1-0 through Komljenovic's goal in the 65th minute. For Drazic and Bogdan, this was the second and final caps. For Cvetković, this was his third and final cap. For Željko Vuković, Župetic, Komljenović, I'm sorry?
Željko Župetic.
Župetic, sorry. Fabian Komljenović, Damir Kalapac, and Ivo Separovic, This was their one and only cap. This was Slavko Ivanić's first cap, and he'd get a third and final cap in 1994. For Biskup, this was his first cap. He would get 5 caps until 92. I believe this was Drazen Jerkovic's last match as selector. He would pass away on December 9, 2008, the very first selector of this new independent Croatia. The season ended, but obviously independence and civil war started. As a result, teams like Dinamo Zagreb would revert back to its original name. For the 1991-92 season, they would now be named Hašk Građanski. Again, Dinamo Zagreb would go through other name changes, and we'll discuss these. For their matches in the European Cups, they would have to play abroad because of the war. I think when Hajduk played against Tottenham for the following season in the Cup Winners' Cup, they had to play in Linz, Austria for their home leg. This would be a common practice for the next couple of years while this conflict continued. Then we get to the end of a season. 91-92, you have Croatia with a new selector, Stanko Poklepovic. He was a former Hajduk Split manager. Croatia would play 3 matches in Australia in July of 1992. The significant things about these matches is that Croatia would have a player sent off in each match. But you also see some of the future international also coming through during this tour. The first match on July 5th was at Melbourne's Olympic Park against Australia. You had Drazen Ledić of Hašk Građanski, Mladen Romić of Rijeka,
Rijeka is the name of the
Rijeka. So Drazen Biskup of NK Zagreb, Igor Štimak of Hajduk Split, Nikola Jerkan of Real Oviedo in Spain, Slaven Bilic of Hajduk Split, Joško Čučuk of Hajduk Split, Ante Miz of Hajduk Split, Josip Weber of Cercle Bruges in Belgium, and Josip Weber would play for the Belgian national team in the 1994 World Cup. He'd be replaced by Kazimir Vulic of Rijeka in the 68th minute, Goran Vucevic of Hajduk Split, and he'd signed for Barcelona that summer, in fact. But I think he would always remain as a substitute, as one of the extra foreign players. And he'd be replaced by Robert Spehar of Osijek. Finally, Goran Vlajovic of Hašk Građanski. And for this first match, Jelicic would be sent off in the 65th minute. We see Slaven Bilic earning his first cap. He'd be in the lineup until 1999 and managed the national team from 2006 to 2012. He's currently, I think he's the West Bromwich Albion manager at the moment. He's also managed West Ham in the past. For Jelicic, who was sent off, this was his one and only cap. This was Ante Miz's first cap. He'd be in the lineup until 94. We mentioned Josip Weber. This was his first cap. Vulic and Vucevic, this was also their first cap. This was Robert Spehar's first cap. He'd be in the lineup until 96. This was Goran Vlajovic's first cap. He'd be in the lineup until 2002. He later would join Padova, I think in 94. This first match, Australia won 1-0 through goal by Andrew Marth in the 62nd minute. So the next match against Australia was on July 8th at Adelaide. For this match, you have Drazen Ledić of Hašk Građanski, Mladen Romić of Rijeka, Drazen Biskup of NK Zagreb. He'd replaced by Niko Čeko of NK Zagreb in the 70th minute, Igor Štimak of Hajduk Split, Nikola Jerkan of Real Oviedo in Spain, Slaven Bilic of Hajduk Split, Dubravko Pavlicic of Rijeka, Ante Mies of Hajduk Split. He replaced by Goran Vlahovic of Hask Građanski in the 46th minute. Josip Weber of Cercle Bruges, Goran Vucevic of Hajduk Split, and Robert Spehar of Osijek. So for this match, it would be Igor Stimak's turn to be sent off. He'd be sent off in the 73rd minute. As far as the match, Australia won 3-1 through goals by Tape in the 10th minute, Spink in the 14th minute, and Van Blurk in the 81st minute. Josip Weber would score for Croatia in the 34th minute. For Niko Čeko, this was his first match, as well as Dubravko Pavlicic. This was his first match for Croatia. He would get 22 caps till 1997. So finally, the third and final match on this tour against Australia on July 12th, this time at Sydney. This match would end scoreless. So you have Miroslav Zitniak of NK Zagreb in goal, Mladen Romic of Rijeka, Dražen Biskup of NK Zagreb, Dubravko Pavlicic of Rijeka, Nikola Jerkan of Real Oviedo, Slaven Bilic of Hajduk Split, Kazimir Vulic of Rijeka. He was replaced by Robert Spehar of Osijek in the 88th minute. Ante Mies of Hajduk Split. He was replaced by Goran Vlahovic of Hask Građanski in the 46th minute. Josip Weber of Cercle Bruges, Goran Vucevic of Hajduk Split, and Niko Čeko of NK Zagreb. For this match, it would be Vucevic who would be sent off in the 79th minute. 3 matches, 3 sending offs. This would be Mladen Romic and Goran Vucevic's third and final caps. They played throughout this tour, but nothing after. We mentioned Josip Weber. This was his third and final cap for Croatia, and he would later play for Belgium around 94-95. He has sadly passed on since then. Kazimir Vulic and Niko Čeko, this was their second and final cap. This was the one and only cap of the substitute goalkeeper Miroslav Zitniak. And we should mention that the manager Stanko Poklapovic has since passed on. He passed away on December 24th, 2018. As far as the tour itself, not much could be analyzed from. It's an experimental squad. You don't have the Boban, the Boksic, none of the famous players. What do you think about this tour?
Idea of this tour was, that was in the middle of the war in Croatia, and we have lots of emigrants from Croatia in Australia. So idea was to connect them with Croatian, or to connect it with new country, which is finally independent. And so that was the idea. And the team was, like you can see, the team was from Croatian players who played in Croatian teams. There was only Nikola Jerkan who played for Oviedo, but all the others were from the football clubs of Croatian National League. So that was like B or even C team in the moment.
I forgot to mention, we were talking about in season 1991-92. Robert Prosinecki transferred to Real Madrid that season. During the season, he did not play for the full Yugoslavian national team because he was receiving death threats. And he had his problems with injury as well that season. It was not a very good season for him, for everything that was going on at home, as well as his physical problems. Zvonimir Boban was signed by AC Milan, but they had to loan him out to Bari, as well as Robert Jarni. He joined him, I think, in mid-season and played for Bari that season. When we come to 1992, initially, Zvonimir Boban was supposed to be part of the package to sign Jean-Pierre Papin. AC Milan to sign Jean-Pierre Papin from Olympique Marseille. Boban was supposed to be as part of a package to be loaned to them maybe a year or two, but he refused and chose to remain at AC Milan for the following season, 92-93. At the time, I think many people thought that this would be a bad idea because he wouldn't get much playing time. But obviously, in the end, he would persevere. And the following season, 93-94, He was one of the integral parts of this AC Milan side. And he had said that he was using that season as part of his football education. At least that's what Ruud Gullit said in an interview. That's what Boban said. In the end, it worked out for him. But at the time, 92-93 AC Milan, you had Gullit, Van Basten, Rijkaard, Papan, and Savicevic as the foreigners for 3 places. He played a few matches here and there. Whenever he played, he was okay. He didn't let his opportunity go to waste, let's just say that, whenever he played. We get to 1992-93 season. On October 22nd, at Zagreb at Maksimir Stadion, Croatia hosted visiting Mexico side managed by Cesar Luis Menotti. For this match, you have a new manager, Vlatko Markovic. He selects the following squad: Zoran Slavica of Hajduk Split in goal, Dražen Biskup of NK Zagreb. He's replaced by Josip Gaspar from Hask Građanski in the 46th minute. Robert Jarni, he was at Bari in Italy that season. Slavko Istvanic of Hask Građanski. Dubravko Pavlicic of Rijeka. Slaven Bilic of Hajduk Split. Stip Andrijačević of Hajduk Split. Ante Miz of Hajduk Split. Davor Šuker at Sevilla in Spain that season, teammates with Maradona. He was replaced by Igor Svitanovic of Hask Građanski. Zvonimir Boban, mentioned at AC Milan that season. He was replaced by Dean Rakunica of Hajduk Split in the 79th minute. And Robert Spehar of Osijek. As far as the match itself, Croatia won 3-0. Davor Šuker would score his 2 first goals for Croatia in the 45th and 90th minute. And Rakunica would score another goal in the 85th minute. As far as the players, for Dražen Biskup, this was his 5th and final cap. Zoran Slavica, this was his 1 and only cap. Josip Gaspar, this was his first cap. Stip Andrijačević. This was his first cap. He would gain 5 caps until 94. Igor Svitanovic, this was his first cap. He'd be in the lineup until 99. For Dean Rakunica, this was his first cap and only goal. And he would not be selected again.
Yeah, he was Dejan Računica.
I'm sorry?
Dejan Računica.
Računica.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Oh, sorry. So Dean Računica. Sorry. At this point, as far as the European Cup matches, are the teams playing on Croatian soil or do they still have to play abroad?
No. In this season, since the year before, there was that short first season of Croatian National League. So we played that only in spring. That was only 12 clubs and they played every few days just to finish it. So UEFA didn't recognize that like real competition. So many of our clubs in European competitions. Next year we started with the European competitions, but the year before there was Hajduk Split and Dinamo Zagreb or Hask Građanski who played in European Cups, but they qualified like representatives of Yugoslavia year before. Yeah, so this year we didn't have any. Right. But next year also we are playing abroad, mostly in Slovenia or Austria.
We mentioned about Dinamo Zagreb name changes. In 1993, the first Croatian president, Franjo Tuđman, forced the team to change its name again, this time to Croatia Zagreb.
Yes, exactly.
So in 3 years, the team went through 3 name changes.
Yeah. Well, original idea was after Yugoslavia fell apart, Dinamo is like communist name. You can find it in Bucharest, in Moscow, and etc. So idea was not to have communist names in our league. And that's why they decided to take name Hask Građanski, although that was combined name of 2 rivals from Zagreb before Second World War. There was 2 teams. There was Hask from Zagreb and there was Građanski also from Zagreb. So those were rivals. And that wasn't really a good idea to combine the name of the rivals. No one accepted that. So everyone saw that supporters are not very happy with that new name, and they are still cheering Dinamo on their matches. So idea was to have third name, now Croatian, maybe that will be accepted, but that wasn't accepted also. And in 2000, they returned their name to Dinamo back. But since Tudjman was alive, he didn't allow them to use name Dinamo again.
During this 92-93 season, on April 12th, Croatia plays an unofficial match against Japanese side Kashima Antlers. That was Zico's team in Japan. This was played in Udine in Italy, Zico's old team in Italy. Not much information could be found about this match other than Croatia winning 8-1 with Šuker scoring, Adzic scoring twice, Boban scoring, and Jarni scoring. I think actually Šuker scored twice. So just an interesting thing I found, but unfortunately I couldn't find any full lineups of this match. At the end of that season, on June 25th at Zagreb, Croatia took on Ukraine with Vlatko Markovic as manager. For this match, you have Dražan Ledić of Croatia Zagreb, Zoran Živković of Inter Zaprešić. Right. He replaced by Josip Gaspar of Croatia Zagreb in the 46th minute, Dubravko Pavlicic of Rijeka, Zoran Vulic. At the time, he was at Nantes in France. He replaced by Mladen Mladenovic of Spanish club Castellon in the 44th minute, Robert Jarni of Bari in Italy, Sasha Persson of Hajduk Split, Zeljko Adzic of Croatia Zagreb. He replaced by Dragutin Čelić of Karl Zeiss Jena of Germany in the 75th minute, Ante Miz of Hajduk Split, Zvonimir Boban of AC Milan, Alen Boksic of Olympique Marseille, recent Champions League winner and top goal scorer in France that season, Alen Boksic. He replaced by Miroslav, is it Bicanic or Bicanic? Bicanic of NK Zagreb in the 59th minute. Davor Šuker of Sevilla. He replaced by Robert Spehar in the 82nd minute. As far as the match, Croatia would win 3-1. Šuker would score in the 13th minute, Adzic in the 47th, and Bicanic in the 81st minute. Gushin would score for Ukraine in the 56th minute. As far as the players, this was Zoran Vulic's third and final cap. Sasha Persson, this is third and final cap. Both Vulic and Persson played the debut match against USA. For Dragutin Čelić, this was the third and final cap. Josip Gaspar, this was his second and final cap. Zoran Živković, this was one and only cap. Same with Zeljko Adzic, one and only cap and only goal. This was Alen Boksic's first official cap with Croatia, and he remained part of the lineup until 2002. This was Miroslav Bicanic's first cap, first goal. He'd gained one more cap in 1994. And we should mention that Vlatko Markovic, the manager for this match, he passed away on September 28th, 2013. And he was also the president of the Croatian Federation, I believe, for some time.
Yeah, for a long time, yes.
Right.
It was, I think, 15 years.
The following season, at club level, you have someone like Alen Boksic. After the scandal with OM and Valenciennes came to light, OM were forced to sell him to make ends meet, and he joined Lazio during the season. And also, you have Davor Šuker is also doing well at Sevilla, scoring goals. As far as Prosinecki, he's still somewhat misfiring in a struggling Real Madrid side. And this would be his final season with Real Madrid. He was no longer the star player that he once was a few years earlier. and he'd struggled to get back into the limelight in that sense. But this season is significant as far as this is where we finally see the real Croatian team of all the stars getting together and playing regularly with a new manager, Miroslav Blažević. This season, you see the strongest Croatian side until then. Their first match would be for the second half of the season on March 23rd, 1994. This was at Valencia against Spain, who were preparing for the 1994 World Cup. As far as Croatia, this was a preparatory match for the upcoming Euro 1996 qualifiers that they would eventually qualify. For this first match, which would be Robert Prosinecci's first match for the national team. Ironically, he's managed by Miroslav Blažević, and you have a story about what Blažević felt about Prosinecci as a youth player.
Yeah, he sent him away from Dinamo Zagreb. That was the reason. So Prosinecki was born in Germany, but he lived his childhood mostly in Zagreb, Croatian capital, and he started to play in Dinamo Zagreb. And in 1987, he went to Crvena Zvezda or Red Star after Blažević said that he will eat his coaching diploma if Prosinecki will ever become a good player. That was one story with Prosinecki and Blažević, and another one is in World Cup 98, when we were all expecting that Prosinecki will play against France, but he entered in last 2 minutes.
By this time in 94, was there still bad blood between the two, or they had patched things up, it would seem?
Well, there was probably never. They were in pretty good relationships, let's say. Prosinecki talked about that recently. I watched some podcast with Prosinecki where he said that it wasn't Blažević's fault and that he wasn't satisfied in Dinamo and he wanted to leave. So Blažević wasn't the real reason, and he's not blaming him also for that in France, what happened with the sub.
Time to move on, I guess, yeah. So for this match on March 23, 1994, Blažević's first match as manager and Prosinecci's first match with the national team. Croatians were wearing white for this match, all white strip. We still didn't have the red and white checker kit yet.
From the first match, we had checkers.
Yeah, but then it seems like for this season, Croatia is either wearing all white or all red, it seems like. But then they bring it...
Not really. We played that first match with checkers. So that's an interesting story also. There was Duško Grabovac. He was in Croatian Football Association. Recently, I read about that his idea was, and Miroslav Šutej was the artist who made those first checkers for that first match, for the match with United States. But Grabovac gave idea because when he was a child, he watched football match between Boa Vista in Portugal against someone in probably Dinamo Zagreb in some European Cup, and he saw those checkers, but it was
black and white checkers.
Black and white, yes, but black and white TV also. So he knew the course of that checkboards, and he gave idea. So he said, maybe in the future Croatia will play with these kind of shirts. So he gave that idea in 1990. And for example, that match with Mexico and Romania, we also played with checkers, but bigger ones, like we had now in 2018. So something like that, but with red backs. In these years, these first few years of Miroslav Blažević, we switched to Lotto. They made our shirts, and first shirts were red with some Lotto signs.
Right.
For qualifications, they started with those
checkers, right. So getting back to this match on March 23rd, 1994 at Valencia against Spain, you have Dražen Ladić in goal from Croatia Zagreb, Igor Štimac of Cadiz in Spain. He replaced by I'm sorry?
Igor Štimac.
Igor Štimac of Cadiz in Spain. He replaced by Dubravko Pavlicic of Rijeka in the 81st minute. Robert Jarni, he had joined Torino in Italy that season. Stipe Andrijacevic of Celta Vigo in Spain. He replaced by Goran Vlahovic of Croatia Zagreb in the 88th minute. Slaven Bilic of Karlsruhe in Germany. Nikola Yerkan of Real Oviedo in Spain. Aljoša Asanovic, but at this point he had joined French club Montpellier. Janko Jankovic of Real Oviedo, replaced by Ivica Mornar of Hajduk Split in the second half, who in turn would be replaced by Ante Miz of Hajduk Split in the 88th minute. Robert Prosinecki of Real Madrid. Alen Boksic of Lazio. And Davor Šuker of Sevilla. I see Boban is missing from this match, probably commitments with AC Milan. You see, this is the first time, I guess, Prosinecki, Boksic, and Šuker are playing for Croatia together. Prosinecki would open the scoring in the 7th minute. Šuker would double the lead in the 51st minute for a 2-0 win. And I'll quickly go through the Spanish squad as well. You have Andoni Zubizarreta, captaining the side from Barcelona, who replaced by Julen Lopetegui, current Sevilla manager and former Real Madrid manager and former Spain manager, of Logroñés in the 66th minute. Albert Ferrer of Barcelona, future Chelsea player. Abelardo of Sporting Gijón. Voro of Deportivo La Coruña. Rafael Alcorta of Real Madrid. Jorge Otero of Celta Vigo. Francisco Higuera of Real Zaragoza. Fernando Hierro of Real Madrid. He replaced by Pep Guardiola of Barcelona in the 46th minute. Miguel Nadal of Barcelona. He replaced by Francisco Camarasa of Valencia in the 46th minute. Julio Salinas of Barcelona. He replaced by Juanel of Sporting Gijón in the 46th minute. Juan Goicoechea of Barcelona, and he replaced by Aitor Begiristain of Barcelona in the 46th minute. Side managed by Javier Clemente. As far as Jankovic and Prosinecki, this was their first cap. This was Ivica Mornar's first cap. He'd gained 7 caps until 2001. Do you remember, was it Ivica Mornar who had disciplinary issues ahead of Euro 96 and he was axed from the squad?
Yeah, that was him.
Do you remember what the issue was? I remember something, but I don't exactly remember what happened.
Well, I have to check that because there was in 2000 and no, not in 1996 there was another player. In 98 there was problems with Igor Cvitanovic. Probably the same problems. He wasn't, or he wasn't listening, or he didn't want to make another circles of running.
Oh, I see.
After Blažević sent him to run or something like that. But I'm not sure was that with Cvitanovic or with Mornar 2 years before. That, let's say, strategy to some player who is not very important and to send him away just to get cohesion of other players. It can happen to you also, but it never happened to some important players.
Of course. Yeah.
Without you can play.
After this match, a month later, on April 20th, at Bratislava, they take on Slovakia. Now, for this match, it was without any of the foreign-based players. It was all home-based team. You have Dražen Ladić in goal from Croatia Zagreb, Samir Toplak of Varteks Varazdin, Darko Vukic of NK Zagreb. He replaced by Milan Rapajic of Hajduk Split in the 46th minute. Elvis Brajkovic of Rijeka, Dubravko Pavlicic of Rijeka, Mladen Mladenovic of Rijeka, Slavko Istvanic of Croatia Zagreb. He'd be replaced by Zvonimir Soldo of Croatia Zagreb in the 46th minute. Zoldo would join Stuttgart later on. Ante Miz of Hajduk Split, Arjan Kozniku of Hajduk Split. He replaced by Joško Popovic of NK Zagreb in the 46th minute. Igor Svitanovic of Croatia Zagreb. Dean Računica of Hajduk Split. He'd replaced by Miljenko Mumlek of Varteks Varazdin in the 46th minute. This home-based squad would lose 4-1 to better prepared Slovakian side. You would have Petar Dubovsky scoring in the 24th minute penalty kick and the 61st minute. Vladimir Kinder, who I think he joined Middlesbrough later on. I'm not certain, but he scored in the 68th minute.
Pretty sure he did. Yeah,
that's the one, right? Yeah. So Lubomir Moravicek, who would later join Celtic Glasgow in the 83rd minute, and Popovic would score for Croatia. Again, this was a home-based squad. You can't really say this was the main national team because all the stars were missing for this match. And again, for this match, Croatia wore a full red shirt. So you have Slavko Ivanic. This was his third and final cap. He played in 91 against Slovenia. This was Ante Mizi's seventh and final cap. Dean Računica, second and final cap. Samir Toplac, this was his first cap. He'd gained one more cap in 94. Darko Vukic, this was one and only cap. Milan Rapajic, this was his first cap. He'd gained caps until 2002. Elvis Brajkovic, this was his first cap. He'd been in the squad until 96. Zvonimir Soldo, this was his first cap. He'd been in the squad until 2002. Adrian Kozniku, this was his first cap. He'd been in the squad until 98. He would later join like Cannes and Bastia in France. Joško Popovic, this is one and only cap and only goal. And Mumlek, this was his first cap. He'd get 6 caps until 92. So you can already see that Blažević is starting to kind of dispense of some of the fringe players who are not going to be part of this new, stronger Croatia now. From now on, we have to assume, unless you play for Croatia Zagreb, you would have to be a player playing for a foreign club to be part of the national team. You'd have to be that good to be part of a national team setup at this point. This match is a blip as far as the loss. It only served to see who he can't rely on anymore, Blažević, as far as the national team. A month later, on May 18th, 1994, at Győr, they played another friendly against Hungary this time. For this match, you have Dražen Ladic in goal from Croatia Zagreb, Nikola Yerkan of Real Oviedo, Igor Stimac of Cadiz in Spain. He'd be replaced by Dubravko Pavlicic of Rijeka in the 46th minute, Slaven Bilic of Karlsruhe, Robert Jarni of Torino, Janko Jankovic of Real Oviedo, Stip Andrijačević of Celta Vigo. He replaced by Zvonimir Soldo of Croatia Zagreb in the 77th minute. Robert Posinekci of Real Madrid. He'd be replaced by Dževad Turković. I'm sorry? Dževad Turković. He replaced of Croatia Zagreb. He'd replaced in the 46th minute. Alyosha Asanovic of Montpellier in France. Alen Boksic of Lazio. Igor Svitanovic of Croatia Zagreb, and he'd be replaced by Mladen Mladenovic of Rijeka in the 46th minute. The match ended as a 2-2 tie. Andras Kereshturi of Hungary scoring twice in the 50th and the 76th minute. And Mladen Mladenovic himself would score 2 goals in the 52nd and 65th minute. This has some of the players back. I'm assuming Boban didn't play because AC Milan had a Champions League final in the following days. For Janko Jankovic, this was his second and final cap. For Dževad Turković as well, this would be his first cap. He'd gained 6 more caps in 95, but then that was it. We come to the final match of the season. This is on June 4th, 1994 at Zagreb's Maksimir Stadion against Argentina with Maradona. For this match, you have Dražen Ladic in goal, Croatia Zagreb, Dževad Turković, Croatia Zagreb, Slaven Bilic, Karlsruhe, Robert Jarni of Torino, Nikola Yerkan of Real Oviedo, Igor Stimac of Cadiz in Spain, Zvonimir Boban of AC Milan, Nikola Jurčević of Casino Salzburg in Austria. They reached the UEFA Cup final that season, losing to Inter. Casino Salzburg with Jurčević.
with Croatian coach Otto Baric, who was...
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah. Jurcevic will be replaced by Ivica Mornar of Hajduk Split in the 46th minute. Robert Prosinecki of Real Madrid, he replaced by Mladen Mladenovic of Rijeka in the 83rd minute. Alyosha Asanovic of Montpellier, he replaced by Stip Andrijacevic of Celta Vigo in the 46th minute. And Davor Šuker of Sevilla, replaced by Igor Svitanovic of Croatia Zagreb in the 75th minute. Croatians wearing all red shirt for this match. Let me quickly go through the Argentina lineup as well. You have Sergio Goicoechea of River Plate in goal. Roberto Sensini of Parma. Sergio Vasquez of Universidad Católica of Chile. He's replaced by Fernando Cáceres of Real Zaragoza in the 88th minute. Oscar Ruggieri of San Lorenzo. Jose Antonio Chamot of Foggia. Diego Simeone of Sevilla. Diego Maradona, captaining the side. He was a free agent at this point. Fernando Redondo of Tenerife. Abel Balbo of Roma. He was replaced by Alejandro Mancuso of Boca Juniors in the 70th minute. Claudio Caniggia of Roma. He replaced by Ariel Ortega of River Plate in the 83rd minute. And Gabriel Batistuta of Fiorentina. And the side managed by Alfio Basile. The match ended scoreless. And Šuker and Maradona had been teammates at Sevilla the previous season. You mentioned that towards the end of the match, the sides just decided to keep the match scoreless and not attack.
Yeah, they had agreement of not attacking each other. It lost maybe 15 minutes.
That's true. I mean, is that really...
Yeah, you can see that match. Well, you can't see what they are talking about, but you can see that they are like doing this for...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because it was important for Croatia after we beat Spain. It was important to, let's say, have good result against some other strong national team. And also for Argentina, it wouldn't be very good to lose before World Cup in '94 when they expected to... They were even one of the favorites for winning of that World Cup in US in '94.
So it was a diplomatic tie then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, not from the beginning, but after the last maybe 10-15 minutes, you can see that they are just moving the ball around and no one is attacking anyone. So
wow.
How was this game seen in Croatia, Joško? Because it's, obviously against one of the biggest teams in the world. It seems like Croatia's already becoming established as a nation that the big countries are recognizing and is establishing a good reputation. I'm imagining this was quite a well-anticipated game.
Yeah, well, the stadium was full and it was really special for us to play against such a great team, and the team which played the finals of the World Cup in 1990, and they were world champions in '86. So that was really something special. And also Diego Maradona is coming to Croatia, so that was
a very strong Argentinian team as well.
Yeah, which was very important for us, like a small and new nation on the map.
From 1990 to 1994, we see how the team has changed. The first team was, like you said, a bunch of ragtag veterans and a couple of players just dragged in the last minute to make the team. And you see this final team against Argentina and the one in Spain are legitimately an excellent side. Some former Yugoslavia internationals and a lot of good youngsters who would form the backbone of this team in its golden age until the 1998 World Cup. Already, Šuker is a big star in Spain. He's just knocking in the goals for Sevilla. And in a couple of years' time, join Real Madrid. And Prosinecki, he would join Real Oviedo on loan the following season. It was better for his career. Actually, in some ways, it revitalized his career to play in maybe a team with less pressure, Was Antic his manager there? Radomir Antic, that following season at Oviedo?
I'm not sure. Probably. He was in Oviedo, but I'm not sure it was that season.
Yeah. So,
but probably was.
Right. So that helped him as far as, like I said, playing more in a less pressured atmosphere. And around this time, Boban is just growing in stature with AC Milan. Boksic at Lazio. His also reputation is getting better and better. So you have a lot of stars. And again, Robert Jarni would join Juventus the following season. You have a lot of good players. And even like Asanovic, he didn't really play for very strong teams around this time, but he was a consistent regular player in one of the better leagues in Europe. Other players like Stimac, Yerkan, Bilic, they're playing for foreign sides and regularly for foreign sides. They're integral parts of their foreign clubs that they're playing for. You already see this backbone of the team that, I mean, we'll discuss in a future podcast, but that would qualify for the Euros. And in the following season, they would spring a surprise by defeating Italy in Italy.
Yeah.
So that's for a future topic. But already it's the beginning of a very good team that you can tell. Going into the qualifiers, I'm assuming Italy were looked upon as favorites. But obviously Croatia, even before going to the qualifiers, they must have liked their chances to qualify as one of the two teams.
Well, yes, we expected to qualify, although Ukraine was also in that group and they were pretty strong. That was, if you remember, that last Soviet Union team, which played. Right. Yeah, it was with lots of players from Ukraine. So we didn't expect that we will beat Italy, but we expected that we will fight with Ukraine for
the other spot.
Yeah.
These 4 years and the progress of the team, bearing in mind the historical perspective of Croatian football, how do you see these 4 years that we kind of skimmed through?
It was very confusing, I would say, those 4 years, because beginning of 90s, we really didn't have a team. If you remember that first match, even the day before we had that match with US, we had only 8 players who showed up. And at the end, we started the match with 14 players altogether. So, and then, like you said, through all of those years, we had those, for example, Australia tour, or those matches with Slovakia, where we were with, let's say, National League players. And then in those last few matches, you can see the real Croatian team, which will be there in next almost decade. Well, till the end of qualifications for Euro 2000, which we didn't manage to qualify. But that's pretty much the same team with maybe Mario Stanic later on. Well, mostly we have all of the players, all important players who played, except of Mario Stanic.
Was the style of the team already established by then when Blažević was taking over?
Yes, with Blažević we already started to play. For example, that first match we played 4-4-2, and mostly with first few selectors we play like that. With Stanko Poklepović we started with 5-3-2, and with Blažević that was like regular style 5-3-2 or 3-5-2. So we were missing. We had, let's say, through all of the 90s, we had really strong first 11, but we didn't have any subs. So that was maybe the reason why we played so much those matches with let's say, the players from National League. They are searching for, especially for a right winger, which was position of Mario Stanic later on. I already mentioned that Jurčević, who was a striker, played on that position in 96 till 96, 97. And so that was the only position where we, let's say, missed the player. But we mostly played in the same formation till 2000. And you could, let's say that every kid knew all first 11 players of Croatian national team in those years.
Yeah. and it worked. It was obviously a system that suited the players that were available as well.
Yeah, there was few changes, but mostly it was the same. The main, let's say, subject was, could the three players like Prosinečki, Boban, and Asanovic, who are creative players and more, let's say, attacking-minded players, could they play together? But Boban sacrificed himself in that trio, and he played like, let's say, defensive midfielder most of the matches. Although originally he was, like Italians would say, trequartista, or number 10.
Yeah, he was a creative player, and he even admitted that he sacrificed himself for the good of the team, for AC Milan and for Croatia. Yeah. Paul, I know obviously by 96, because of the Euros, Croatia would be more or less well known in England. But around this time, are the names of Boban, Buksic, are their names kind of well known in England or not yet still?
Probably Boban from playing at Milan, certainly Prosinečki because he's already played in a World Cup and played for Real Madrid. Maybe Buksic and Čučuk, not just yet.
Right.
And obviously later on, a lot of these players played in England as well. At this time, I would say, because we wouldn't have seen them in competitive internationals, it'd only really be for the club teams that we might have seen them in European competition at this time.
Prosinečki, he played at Portsmouth at some point, right?
He did later on, about 2001, I think. Not even in the top division. That was championship.
Yeah, I know Čučuk had a difficult time at Arsenal, but then he joined West Ham like during the season. But even there, I don't think he really adapted. Yeah,
didn't really see him at his peak, I don't think.
Right. Buksic joined Middlesbrough later on, and again, I don't remember. That was a memorable spell, but
he had a good season in Middlesbrough. I think he scored 14 or 16 goals.
Maybe, yeah.
And he was the most paid player at the moment. But that Middlesbrough was really a team who paid a lot.
Right.
They were spending a lot at that time, Stimac was very good at Derby, and he was, very, very solid player in that team.
Right.
Also Bilic. Bilic was captain of Everton.
That's right, yeah. West Ham and Everton, yeah.
For our next episode, we'll be discussing the 1994-95 season, where we see this Croatian national team even excel further and be regarded even a stronger team that it is at this point. Once again, we would like to thank Mr. Čučuk for his participation in his series. As always, feel free to leave questions and comments. You may contact me on Twitter at SP1873, on my blog and my Facebook, both under Soccer Nostalgia. Mr. Paul Whittle can be contacted on Twitter at 1888letter. And you may also follow the podcast on Spotify under Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. Mr. Čučuk's info on email, he can be contacted at joško.čučuk@yahoo.com. And this information is listed on the blog and Spotify upload. Joško, thank you once again. And we'll continue talking about this great team for our future podcasts, certainly until the end of this decade. So thank you once again.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Joško. And we're looking forward to carrying on with the rest of the national team in the decade.
Thank you.
Bye.